Hello, welcome back to the Techimaki channel. Today we're going to continue the creation of our front-end layer on the order taking system, the Tmaki. We're going to design the menu component and actually really jump into the code, because in the last session we covered more prerequisites and preparation and the initial bootstrap of a Blazor application. And today we are really going to focus on the code and the implementation. So let's go for it. Alright, so now let's create our first component. This is going to be the menu component. The menu is going to be the catalog of products that the user is going to see in the home page, and based on this, he's going to click to add to the cart to confirm the order. So to do this, let's click on the root in root folder of our project and click in create folder, and let's call it components. Inside of the components folder, let's create the first file. This is going to be a Razor file. Basically, as I said previously, Razor files are the ones that we use to define the HTMLs, but also as well the C# logic for this user interface fragments. These are components that we can create and build our page, putting all of these components together. The name of this component is defined by the name of the file. So here I'm going to define menu.razor. I always like to use the capability of HTML5, which is to define your own tags. You don't need to actually use div for everything. You can define a very semantic tags. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create a product card. And inside of this product card, I'm going to put an image overlay. This image is going to have a source. We're not going to define what is this source for now. I'm going to close the image tag, then continuing, let's call it EMG, right? This is the right for images. I'm going to define now the properties of this product card. So this product card is going to be the following. It's going to be a card, and there's going to be the image of the product, like the certain item on our restaurant. And on top of it, like as an overlay, it's going to contain the text that contains the title of the product and the description of the product, and also a button asking you to add to your cart. Great, so let's define this. So here we're going to define product information. Let's define product title. I'm going to also define product description, and that's all. Let's think about the second piece. So inside of this product info area, I'm also going to define a button, and this button is going to contain the following text: add to cart. Okay, so now let's define the code, and then inside of this area here, we're going to define our C# code. So let's create a class first to define what is this product structure. Let's define a class that is going to be the response from when we retrieve the products from the backend. So this is going to be public class product response, and this class is going to contain the data that we want to display here on this component. So let's start with the public string title. This is the title of our product. Public string description of our product. Finally, let's put image, right? So we need the image path, string image path. Oh, wow, there's the ID. So let's move this a little bit down, and let's put the ID. So public GUID, and let's put product ID. This is the definition of our product response. Now let's define the logic that is going to load all of the products from the catalog when this component is loaded. Blazor actually has a life cycle to load their Razor pages. And when it's loading, one of the steps of this life cycle is to call a method called onInitializedAsync. We can use this in order to put the code that we want to be executed when we are loading this component. So in our case here, it would be great if we could go to the backend and get the list of products when we are loading this component. So then it's going to render all the items from the backend. So let's go for it. We're going to call protected, then also overwrite async, because this is an asynchronous method. And this method returns task, and the name is onInitializedAsync. Great. So this onInitializedAsync that is executed when this component is loaded. So let's do the following. One thing that is important to take into consideration is that in order for us to do this, we need to make a call and retrieve the data from the backend. Let's define a service, another class that is going to contain the logic to really retrieve the data from the backend. And in order to keep a very good isolation and keep the method of HTTP isolated to a certain class, let's define a service class, because that's a good practice to avoid like mixing the logic of your component with the infrastructure that it's going to use to retrieve the data, because this helps a lot when you're going to evolve your project in the future. So for now, let's define it. Let's define a public class over here, product service. And this product service class is going to retrieve the products for us. Let's go and implement the first method that is going to be called product response is what's going to return. And the name is going to be get products. Great. So this method over here is going to call HTTP to get that information. But we don't have HTTP available here in this Blazor class yet. We need to make sure that this is loaded. So how is HTTP C# implementation, the web component, the one that allows you to make HTTP requests, how can we make it available in our Blazor class? So let's go to the program here, and then we're going to find how this is going to be made available for us, right? Initially, what happens is that when the Blazor runs, the first C# class that is executed is the program, the one that contains the main, right? The main method is the first one that is called when you are starting your Blazor application. And don't forget that this is a client-side application. So the main is actually running in the machine of the user, okay? It's just like a desktop application, but it's running in the WebAssembly that is inside of the browser of that user. And inside of the main, we have this builder. This builder is the one that creates the WebAssembly context. And by creating this, it also allows you to add some services on top of the WebAssembly. And the first service that is being added by default to us is the HTTP client. This one allows us to call HTTP just by using that reference in any Blazor page that we like. But actually, how are we going to import that? How are we going to use this? If you take a look at the imports.Blazor, you're going to see that this is available here. It's using systemnet, it's using system.http.json. That's all great. So then this is how these DLLs are available also for our Blazor pages. Finally, if you look at the example of the fetchData.Blazor, you're going to see that the way that Blazor allows you to inject dependencies on the Blazor pages is by using the clause @inject. We can automatically inject an instance, and then we can define a property that is going to receive the injection of an instance of the HTTP client for us. So let's go back here to the menu and do the same thing. So here on the top, I'm going to put @inject HTTP client, and I'm going to give it a name, right? In my case, it's going to be HTTP. Great. So let's use the HTTP over here. And in our service, we're going to do HTTP dot, and let's get from JSON. So we're going to get actually data from the server that is in JSON format. So the server is going to respond to us a content in JSON format, and we are going to use it in order to load our products. So let's call here a path where the file is going to be located, the file with the list of products. Let's define it on a simple data folder. And the name of the file is going to be products.json. We also need to make sure that we are going to inform appropriately the get from JSON async, that we want the data that is going to return to be formatted as product response array, right? So it's going to be an array of product response. We also need to make sure in the response of our get products, we are going to return an array. In here, we can put return await, because we want to wait for this to be returned. Just make sure that we are also going to make this public async method. So this is going to be a public async method that returns the get product. This is a task of product response. Great. All right. So now that we are defining here the data that we want to collect, we can call this get products on our main uninitialized async. But we are going to define that and fill a property from this component in order for this component to have that data and being able to populate on the HTML. So let's define the private product response array. This product response array is going to be called products. Okay, that's fine. Let's call it like underscore products because it's a private field. So let's fill this private field products with what we have from the product service. So let's call product service dot get products from there. We just need to make sure that we have an instance of the get products when we do that, right? In order to define an instance of the product service, we are going to also inject the product service inside of our Razor file. So to do this, it's very similar to how we do for the HTTP client. So let's inject product service, and then we have the product service over here. So we need to make sure that when the Razor is being loaded, we have the appropriate injection of the product service there. So to do this, we go back to the program here, and let's define builder.services.addTransient, and let's inform iProductService, it's the interface, and product service as the concrete class. We don't have the iProductService yet, so let's define this one. We're gonna actually go back to the menu.razor, and here let's select the public class product service and move it to the program.cs. As soon as you click on the product service class, there is a light bulb that appears, and you can click to see the fixes that it suggests to you. The first fix is move the product service to a new file, and this is going to move your product service class to this new file. The other feature that you have available also is when you click here on the product service again, you have the light bulb again, and then you can extract the interface, and then it's going to generate the interface for you. Make sure to have the import for all the dependencies on your solution. So for example, in this case, as it is a task, you need system threading tasks. Also here, we are talking about the product response, right? So the product response is not available for this service. So let's also get the product response for us. So let's go to the menu.razor, get the product response, and do the same thing. Let's extract it to its class. But as it is a Razor file, the C# extensions do not apply to this file. So we have to move it manually. Let's go, product response. Let's move it manually to the product service class. When we move it to the product service class, it's going to ask for a refactor, and basically it's going to ask to be moved to a new file. So then we have the product response and the product service. Let's do the following. On the product response and on the product service, let's move them to the components folder. Let's create a subfolder for the menu that is called menu. Let's move the menu to the menu subfolder. And let's also move the product response and the product service. Great, so now we have everything related to the menu and product is in the same place. We need to go back to the program and need to refactor some stuff. So let's take a look here. No, it actually has already recognized the product and the product service and the interface iProduct service. All right, I think it's because we are still referencing, the namespace. So let's fix the namespace a little bit because it needs to match the sequence of the structure of folders where we are located. So components.menu, it's important to keep this structure. And the product response as well, let's do the same thing. So tmaki components.menu. In the program now, it's going to show that these references are not here. Let's click on the light bulb, add unusing to the tmaki.components.menu. Then done. Okay, so getting back to the service here, what happens is that we don't have the instance of the HTTP available. So let's create a constructor. Constructor, yes, so generate the constructor for product service. And we inject the HTTP client. Let's create a field and let's see, generate field. Wow, that's amazing. Wow, that's great. This is cool. The type could not be found. So let's make sure that here in the product service, we reference the system net HTTP. We have using system net HTTP JSON. That's all right. Awesome. So now we have the get from JSON async working pretty fine. Okay, so getting back to the product response here, what else? We have like a product with the UID using system. We need to make sure that we use system in this class. So here we don't need the injection of the HTTP client anymore. We can remove it from here. In regards to the product service, that's important to have, but remember, we need to have it specified in the imports.razor. So let's go here using tmaki.components. Oh, it's missing the UI. That's the important thing. So tmaki.ui components menu, same thing here, tmaki UI components menu. Let's go to the program as well. UI components menu, and here on the imports.razor, let's do tmaki UI.components.menu. Perfect. So by doing this, when you go back to the menu.razor, this is going to be solved because it knows where this product service is located. For some reason, it's showing an error. Let's see what it is. Oh, right. This is an asynchronous call. So let's make sure that we do await. All right, perfect. So now we have the component, but this component is not being used anywhere. So nobody's using this component, and we are not even using the products, the underscore products, anywhere in our HTML. So let's start by that. Let's suppose in the beginning that if our underscore products does not exist, right? If it is new, let's make sure that we have something to display when it's new. Let's create a div, and this is going to be loading. So this is loading the products. If not, if there are content, now let's think about a for each, right? So we need a for each var product in products, the underscore products. Let's put this HTML over here. And inside of this HTML, let's just use the content that is going to be inside of the product. So first thing is product.title. Then we have product.description. All right. Then we also have the image, product.imagePath. Out. Let's define a description for this image. This is going to be product.title. So let's go back now to the area that defines the sample data. So let's define a new file. This file is going to be called products.json. Here I'm going to paste a list of products that I have already created before. And let's do a small refactor on the name property instead of title, because this way we are more aligned to what is in the sequence diagram. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get back here to the product response, replace it by name. And also in the menu.razor, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to change the product.title to product.name. There's a little adjustment missing here. We need actually to inject from the iProduct service. We cannot inject from the concrete instance. You have an interface, and then you can define what is the concrete instance that you're going to inject to solve for that interface. So then this is what allows us to, in the future, for example, instead of using a service that goes to look for a file, it actually goes to look for the backend. So, okay, so in this case, let's change this for iProduct service, save the file. And the last thing that is missing is telling the Blazor where we are going to put this component, where this component needs to be rendered. So let's go to the index.razor, and in the index.razor, let's specify menu tag. The menu tag is what Blazor is going to solve in runtime and change the rendered content that is in the menu.razor. Okay, so now there are just one more thing that is missing. We need to copy the image files. So let's go to the www-root. Let's create a new folder here. It's going to be called images. So in the products.json, we have already image and ccombo.jpg. Let's just call this folder img. And inside of this folder, let's put the two image files. I will right click and click in Review in File Explorer, go to the image, paste the two files over here, close it, then they are ready to be used and in the right path. So let's hit F5 to run our solution and see if the menu has been presented on the index page. Here we go. Okay, so the image is displayed. Here we have also the title. We have the description as well. If you look here, right? So you have the title, the description, and the button. So let's now continue and work in the style of our solution. Hey, hold on, but this is a topic for our next video. In the next video, we're going to continue on the implementation of the front end and work on the design of this front end. So if you want me to design another system, just put that on the comments and don't forget to click on subscribe and also click on the notification button in order to receive new videos. So now let's move to the next video. I see you there.